So this lesson is going to go quite advanced for a lot of you, so don't panic too much if you don't quite understand it. These using while loops, using for loops is kind of a higher level part of our coding. But actually, I thought this would be a really good time just to show you what a while loop is and get you to create a folder that includes a while loop. And in actual fact, because we've been developing this simple quiz from a very basic, long-winded if statement version, and then onto a list version, and now this one, which is our most efficient so far version, which is where we're going to stop as well. It just shows you how you can develop code, and it also shows you that although you have one answer, it's not always the only answer. So there are always different ways of doing it. There's never ever one single answer. With code, you can generate the same result with loads of different code, but the thing that we look for is mainly efficiency. So finding the simplest to understand and the smallest amount of code, because the most efficient ways don't always offer us the best solutions in terms of being able to edit the code later on. So this is something to keep in mind as well. We're always fighting with this kind of this battle between the two things, efficiency and simplicity. So at this particular level, that's what we're aiming for. So while loops. So what are while loops? Basically, in the last few videos, we've created 10 question quizzes, and you've probably ended up with close to 100 lines of code. Now the idea being is if you've got 10 questions, that you should be able to reuse one of those questions 10 times rather than having to write it 10 times. And that's where our list comes in, because we've written the list and then we wrote the if statement and the input statement with the question. Really and truly, we should only have to write that once, and then we should be able to use a loop to go over it, just changing the question each time. So that really is the mission now, just to make it more efficient. So I'm just going to show you how to insert a loop into your code and all different things. At the end, I would like you to create a new simple quiz, this time using the while loop, and make sure you do have the free versions. So for instance, make sure you have the if statement quiz like I've got here, make sure you've got the list version, and then make sure you've got another one called loops, because later on when in time, when you come back and think, oh god, I remember doing that, but I can't quite remember how to do it, you can come into these, and because they're the most simplest basic versions of our code, it should be really easy to decipher. So create that now, and then open up Python, and let's begin. So I've deliberately just deleted a bunch of my code, and I'll put it back in a second with the old quiz on. But the first thing I wanted to show you what is a loop, and very specifically in Python we have two kinds of loop. We have a for loop and we have a while loop. Today we're just going to look at the while loop. Now in most programming languages, it would take a lot of code to generate one loop, okay, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 lines of code. But with Python, it's very, very simple. It's as simple as writing the word while. And then much like the if statement, you then have to tell it what you want to compare. Okay, so if we said our same as our if statement, if name is equal to Mr. Cameron, and then the colon, run this piece of code below. Okay, so as you can see, it's very, very similar to the if statement, but this is a way of it keep going around. Now, same again, when we tab in for our indent, basically what it's saying is anything that's indented will be looped. Okay, so anything that's indented will be looped, and it will keep looping until the name variable is equal to Mr. Cameron. Okay, so that's it. This is one line of code. You have the keyword while, you have the parameter that you want to compare, you have the comparison value, and then the data that name should compare to be equal in this case, and then followed by the colon. Okay, and then underneath you just have to indent the code. So if I just come out of this and show you the if statement, so if name is equal to Mr. Cameron, and then colon, you'll notice that this is a convention now. This is kind of how Python works when it wants you to compare data. The if statement will only run once, so that's important to know. Unless it's inside of a while, it will only run once. Whereas the while statement will run and run and run, or the while loop will run and run and run until this parameter is met, okay? Whereas this one, the if, will only run if this parameter is met, okay? So this one will run until, and this one will only run if, okay? So hopefully that makes a bit of sense, but it probably won't until you see it in action. So just give me 2 seconds, because I deleted all my code and I'll put it in my notes over on the side here. So let me just copy that and then paste it into my code. So here is our code from the last lesson. So as you can see, there's quite a lot of code there, and I've only written 3 questions. So our mission then is to get rid of all of this code. We do not want any of this extra code. We just want to write this if statement and this question once, okay? Now in the past lesson I had it as question 1, so let's just knock that down. So from question 1, just knock it down so it just says question, because I want to use the iteration and values to kind of just keep going round and round and round. So I just want to look at the question 1, and because it's on a loop, every time it comes back to this, it will reset the value based on what the user puts in, okay? So we don't have the same problem we had in the last one, where the if statement would ask the question, but because it hadn't come back to this, it was seeing it as a new iteration, but with the same answer still applied, okay? So that's one thing. We're still going to use our list, you know, and you should have 10 questions in there. We're still going to use our points, and we're still going to use our current, but we do need one more. The next one, I'm going to call it quiz. And quiz, currently, if you had 10 questions, you'd want it to 11, but because I've only got 3, I'm going to set it to 4. Oh, sorry, I'm going to set it to 1, but the maximum value is going to be 4, okay? So let's create our while loop. So the while loop starts here, just above this question, because this is the part that we want to ask 10 times, or in my case 3 times, okay? And we want it to evaluate this stuff 3 times. So, or 10 times in your case. So we just say while, and then we're going to use our new variable called quiz. So while quiz, this time is less than 4. You do have to be careful about this, about infinite loops as well. So if I said something like while it's equal to 0, then this is not equal to 0. It will never be equal to 0. So this will run infinitely, okay? It will never stop, and it will crash your machine, and it'll be awful, okay? So we need a parameter that will actually execute, that will actually it will get to eventually. So the one we're going to use is this quiz is less than 4. And at the end of our, let's just indent this first. So all of this section here needs indenting, because we want this whole block to belong to the while loop. So up here in the format button, you can say indent region, okay? So now that's indented, it all belongs to it. Don't forget your colon. So there's our statement. So while quiz is less than 4, run this code. Once it's higher than 4, this code will never run, and then it will give us this, it will move on to this bit of code, because this bit of code here is outside of the loop. You can see that because it's not indented, okay? So let's indent 1, and let's just put quiz equals quiz plus 1. So every time it runs this code now, it will be allowed to go up. If we didn't put this bit of code here, once again, we would create ourselves an infinite loop. So you have to be very, very careful about that. You don't want to create an infinite loop there. So that is pretty much it. That's the whole code. So in 2 lines of code plus an indent, we have written our while loop that will just keep going around and round and round these. But we should test it to make sure that is absolutely right. So let's run that. So straight away, if I move this over a little bit, and we can see what the code's doing. And you can always put print statements in just to show you which iteration this code is on. But at the moment it says welcome to the simple quiz. So it's run this line of code here, and then it says what is the capital of England. So because it's run what is the capital of England, we know that it's run this input statement for the first time, and we know that it's pulling from this value. So if I type London, now when I press enter, all being well, because we've set current to +2 on the right, if the answer is right, and +2 if the answer is wrong, no matter what, it will iterate through, and I'll make this a bit smaller, it will iterate through this one because that's +1 and then that's +2, so it should give us what is the capital of France. At the same time, it will also say that's correct, and it will also add 10 points. If I get these 3 correct and everything's working, I should have 30 points by the time it gets to here. So let's press enter, and it says that's correct. So it's run this line of code, and then it's run this what is the capital of France. So it has run these 2 lines of code, but you'll notice that it didn't run any of this code, because if it run this code you would see, sorry, that's wrong. So it hasn't run any of this code. It has run this code because now it's actually, oh, we won't know that bit yet actually, because it hasn't given us, when that finishes we'll know that it's running this bit of code. But because it's in line with this if statement, it will run that before going back to the beginning and then asking this question again. So what is the capital of France? And Paris is the answer. Press enter. It says that's correct, so it's back here again. Then it says what's the capital of Greece? So it's gone through this bit, and then it's asking that question again. So let's say Athens. And then now when we press enter, all being well, this will now be 4 because it started at 1, which was this iteration here. This was 2 and this was 3. But when it gets to this one, it will now say 4 because it's gone 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's gone, nope, you can't do it anymore. So all being well, it will say that's correct. Well done, your score is 30 points. So that works absolutely brilliantly, and I'm absolutely in awe of that. And that was a nice quick lesson, which is nice. And it's actually quite a complex topic. So although this is the first time that we've done this, you will probably have to do it again. But let's just keep in mind, all we've done here is we've added this line of code. So we've added something to compare, and then we've told it to iterate. We've told it, look, you've got to move quiz up. If you don't move quiz up, this will never be true, and it will just run an infinite loop, and it will never, ever, ever stop, okay? But it will give you an error message because I don't have any more questions. So I hope that was useful. Your mission now then is to create your 3rd quiz, this time using the while loop, and make sure you've got 10 questions again. If you want to create a completely different quiz, that's absolutely fine. And then in the next lesson, we're going to move on to another topic. Well done.